Hi, I'm going to do my solar PV and Tesla Powerwall update for October 2019. I thought it was really bad, but on reflection, it's not as bad as I thought it was. So stay tuned. Hi, John Tisbury here. If this is your first time here and you're interested in Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Kona, solar PV, Tesla Powerwall 2, EVs, that kind of thing, I also do photography and cinematography. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell icon to be notified of new updates as and when I upload them. As I said in the intro, in this video I'm going to run you through our solar stats and Tesla Powerwall performance for October 2019. If you're new here, I'll just give you a little bit of background to us so I can sort of set the scene for you. We're in the UK. We're based in the the East Midlands. Suddenly moved. We're based in the East Midlands. Oh, look, it's going to be my brain. East Midlands. So yeah, based in the East Midlands. In October, I paused because we've just had our solar PV expanded and 50% increase. Cover that in another video. We're currently on a 4 kilowatt array. This was in October with a 3.8 Sunny Boy SMA inverter. We have a Tesla Powerwall, which was installed in December 2018. It's almost a year old, so I will do a video on that when it comes up to its first birthday. We are running 2 electric cars. We've got Tesla Model 3 and we've got a Hyundai Kona. We are retired as well, so we're at home all the time. And as a result, our electricity usage has gone up quite considerably, hence the additional solar. We've also got in our studio, or in Jill's studio, electric kilns. So we've got 3 electric kilns which are running at various times throughout the day and evening. So our electric usage is quite high, which is fine. We're also on the Octopus Energy Go tariff, so that's the cheap rate between 4:30 in the morning and 12:30 in the morning and 4:30. 4 hours, that works out at 5 pence per unit. At all other times it's about 13.45 pence. I think that tells you all you need to know. I'll put all the details down in the description down below anyway. If you follow along before on these types of videos, I run through a spreadsheet which I'll bring up on screen. Our initial PV installation was done in September 2011, so it's quite old, and we don't have any Wizzy Fandango off-site or website recording or app or anything like that. So every day, at the end of the solar day, I record the stats for what we've done solar-wise, and also what the previous day, what we'd used in home usage and all that kind of stuff. So that's where my figures come from. I'm going to refer to my spreadsheet and I'm going to take you through in the normal run-of-mill, for those that are familiar with them, the order that we go through. We start off with our solar generation. So for October 2019, our total kilowatt hours was 243, which when I first typed it in and looked at it, I thought, oh God, that's a bit disappointing. It's actually very low. It's actually the 3rd lowest month so far to date. So yeah, 243 kilowatt hours, so not brilliant. That worked out at an average of 7.8 kilowatts generated on a daily basis. And I did say in the intro that what I thought was initially a very poor figure turned out not to be as poor as I thought it was, and I'll come back to that, because that 243, when you first look at it, you think, oh crikey. But generally you're comparing it to the previous month or the month before that, or 3 or 4 months earlier on in the year, and really you need to compare apples with apples to get a real representation of whether that's actually a good month or a poor month. Scrolling down to look at our solar panel performance and our Powerwall performance. Struggling with my words this evening. This chart looks at our contribution to self-power. Something I didn't say on the intro is that we're set up with time-based control on our Tesla Powerwall 2. So we're in advanced mode, time-based control, TBC, and cost saving. So it's not really targeted for self-power. That's a secondary benefit. It's more targeted at cost saving. So bear that in mind when you look at these particular figures. I will put this spreadsheet on the description down below. I've linked to it, so if you're interested in having a look at it in a lot more detail, by all means do. It's in my Dropbox, so it's always sitting there, so you can pick it up and have a look at it as and when. So in terms of October, our solar contributed just 13% to our total self-power for the month, whereas the Tesla Powerwall did 36%. So that's one of the few times, I'm just skimming through the, in fact it is the first time this year that the Powerwall has overtaken the solar PV in terms of the percentage that it's put towards our overall self-power. Giving that a total of 49%, so almost 50% self-power for the month, which based on the level of solar that we've had is sort of quite understandable. If I then scroll down to look at a new chart introduced this last month, and this looks at the percentage of self-power during peak and the percentage of self-power during off-peak. And we would expect a higher percentage when it's peak, when it's expensive, and a lower to even nil percentage when it's off-peak. That's when the Powerwall is charging and taking advantage of the cheap rate to be able to then supply the house when it's at peak rate. And that's indeed what we're finding. So the peak is showing here in red and the off-peak is showing in green. Self-power was just 2% self-power for the month in the off-peak period, which is absolutely fine, and 73% self-powered during peak time. So I guess what that's saying is that during our expensive electricity, we were 73% self-powered. Compare that against September, where we were 89% self-powered. And the difference between those two figures is by and large down to reduction in the amount of solar that was generated to support that. Let's have a look at the Powerwall in and out. So this is a total of what goes into the Powerwall through the month and also what we take out of the Powerwall for the month. We put in 381 kilowatts and we got out 364 kilowatts, which makes it a very efficient month. Actually, we were 96% efficiency in terms of what we put in. We managed to get 96% of it out, which is very good. And comparing that to the previous month, we put a lot more through the Powerwall, 292 in last month versus 381 this month. So it's quite considerable, almost another 100 kilowatts. So pleased with that. We've had a look at the sort of day by day view here. I just need to zoom out of that a bit because I can't actually see it on screen. Two things I meant to say to you is I'm doing this in the studio because our central heating has broken and it's very cold in the house. Engineers coming tomorrow, gas central heating, happy days. And it's also fireworks night that I'm recording this on, so it may be that there's some additional background noise which you'll hear. It was when I started, but it seems to have quieted down a bit now. So perhaps most of them have finished as it's 8 p.m. Saying that one just goes off as I say that. So never work with children and animals, they say, or fireworks. So this chart looks at the day by day for what we use, so what the house has used, what solar we've generated, what we've exported to the grid and what we've imported to the grid. You can really see there, if you look at the yellow bars for our solar, how poor some of the days were. There were a couple of days where we managed just one kilowatt throughout the whole of the day. Just managed to generate 1 kilowatt. Hurrah! And it hasn't really been a great month in total. There was only one day where we went above 20 kilowatts right at the beginning of the month on the 2nd of October. Most of the days were between 10 and sort of 15 kilowatts. Though, you know, there was no marvelous sunny days. It was a very dull month, and that's obviously generated very poor solar as a result. We've had some high house usage as well during the month of October. There was some family circumstances which meant we had to do a lot of travelling up north, and that required us day trips back and forward to Yorkshire, and lots of charging before we went, lots of charging when we came home. And because we were doing very unplanned trips, as it were, we had to be there on the spur of the moment. The cars were always topped up, so we didn't have the luxury of being able to use the sun to power the cars. And even if we had, we didn't have much sun anyway, so we wouldn't have been able to charge them to the sufficient amount. So yeah, happy days. So I guess in my roundabout way of saying we used a lot of electricity during October because of that. But, you know, hey-ho. Let's have a look at that actually. Monthly average for home usage, it was 36 kilowatts, which is very, very high. Last month it was 25. And from the grid, we put a lot more from the grid as a result of all the car charging and the lack of solar. So it's 29 kilowatts on average a day, comparing that to September where it's 14. But at least we know the reasons why. If we have a look at the grid usage in terms of what we sent to the grid, in October we sent 17.7 kilowatts back to the grid. So that's a very good month in terms of utilising what we actually generated. I guess the downside of that is we didn't actually generate very much. So sending a small amount of a little isn't really an achievement. And the whopping one here is what we've actually used from the grid. We pulled in 910 kilowatts from the grid in October, which is a whopping amount. It's almost twice, well, it's not almost, John, it is more than twice what we used in September at 424 kilowatts. There was one I was going to take you back to, which is a new one. So I said earlier on that I thought the solar production for October was really, really poor. So I wanted to track over the time that we've had the solar installed. As I said, we had it installed in 2011. So we've got quite a long period of time that we can look back, and we can do that month by month by month. So during October, I pulled this tab together, which shows you for each month exactly what we produced starting from September 2011 right through to the current month. I'm not going to go through every month because that's a little bit dull, but for October we've got, say, from October 2011 through to October 2019, and our 243 kilowatt hours that we produced doesn't look quite so bad. And in fact, it's the third highest across that data range, and not far behind. No, it's actually more than that. It's the fourth highest. The highest was 344 kilowatts, and the lowest was 191 kilowatts. That was in October 2015. So putting that into perspective, actually October was fairly good for us when we're looking at apples with apples. It's quite interesting, isn't it, when you start comparing and looking at data. If you look at just your previous couple of months, well, you know, you're not really comparing like for like, but year on year, it's a good comparison to look at. So I was quite pleased to see that and thinking, oh, actually, October wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It was fairly dull, but, you know, not as bad as October 2015. So heck knows how bad October 2015 was. because it was 191 kilowatts, so it must have been very grey. There's also something I was going to show you as well, which is actually really interesting. It was suggested to me by a fellow person on Twitter. I'm rubbish at doing two things at once. And just bring up the website. It's called PV Output, and it's a website that you can create an account onto, and you can either manually upload your data, or if you're clever, you can do live data and feed it into that. The good thing is I've got my data on there, but you can also look at other people's data, so you can see other systems that are in the same location as you, or have the same kilowatt output as you, and see how you can compare. So it's a much nicer way of comparing apples with apples. I shall put a link to my site as well, so you can have a look at that if you're interested. And yeah, so it was Kev who put me up to that and suggested it. So thank you for your suggestion, Kev. I am now using it. And he's a solar installer and technical guru. And I was moaning on Twitter that I hadn't generated any electricity, or any PV on a particular day. I think that's probably that day where we did just a kilowatt. And he's saying, oh, that's very unusual, and asked me what panels I'd got, and we got into a bit of a Twitter conversation, and then he suggested recording the data on there. So thanks for the suggestion on that, it's very useful. They're the key things I wanted to take you through. I've got other data on the myenergi app and the Tesla app, but I want to do a separate video on those because I'm not actually happy with the data sets on either of those, and I know a few other YouTubers are in a similar situation. So I wanted to cover that in a little bit more detail rather than just breeze through it as a tailpiece on the end of a video. So that's my stats. Hope you found that useful. There's a couple of people already asking, John, when are you going to publish your stats? Well, here they are. And let me know what your stats are. Drop them down in the comments below so we can compare and contrast. So yeah, that is definitely it now. So don't forget to like, hit the old subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, hit the notification bell icon, and I will see you on the next one. All right, take care. Bye.